Okay, on that. Good morning. The committee will come to order. Pursuant to notice, the Committee on Science and Technology meets to consider H.R. 4061, the Cybersecurity Enhancement Act of 2009. H.R. 4061 is a good bipartisan bill based on input we received in 4 hearings on cybersecurity. And I would like to thank my colleagues, Dr. Lipinski, Mr. Wu, Dr. Ehlers, and Mr. Smith for their leadership and bipartisan work on the bill. As many of you know, October was Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I think it's timely that we are considering this legislation on the heels of that effort to encourage people to protect their computers and the nation's critical cyber infrastructure. The theme of the recent awareness campaign was our shared responsibility. I find the theme particularly fitting as it also reflects an overarching recommendation in this year's administration review of cyberspace policy. The common thread through all of this recommendations of the review was the importance of partnerships between the federal government and the private sector in advancing a more secure cyberspace. Specific recommendations of the administration review included developing a skilled cybersecurity workforce, coordinating and prioritizing the federal R&D portfolio, improving technology transfer to make sure new technologies make it into the marketplace, promoting cybersecurity education and awareness for the general public, and coordinating U.S. representation in the development of international standards. Today's bill addresses every one of these recommendations. H.R. 4061 is based on the concept that in order to improve the security of our network systems, which are fundamentally both public and private in nature, the federal government must work in concert with the private sector. H.R. 4061 will further our efforts in this direction and urge my colleagues to support it. Additionally, endorsements so far, and I'm sure that we're going to be getting several more as the bill goes forward, but so far the endorsements come from the Business Software Alliance, the Association of Computing Machinery, Computing Research Association, and Sun Microsystems. And now I recognize my partner, Mr. Hall, to present his opening remarks.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. We're all aware of the importance of cybersecurity and how much that importance has grown dramatically in recent years, as most of the critical systems upon which we depend, from telecommunications to electricity to banking and commerce, rely on secure and reliable computing. This committee has a long record of leadership on these issues dating back to the 1980s, and the agencies and programs we oversee are critical to the success of federal efforts to address cybersecurity vulnerabilities. This bill will help to support these efforts through authorization of activities of 3 general areas. First, basic research at the National Science Foundation, which we know is a key driver to increasing security over the long term. Second, expanded NSF scholarships to increase the size and skills of the cybersecurity workforce. And 3, increased R&D, standards development and coordination, and public outreach at the National Institute of Standards and Technology related to cybersecurity. These are modest but important changes that will help us do a better job of protecting our communications networks. And I'm pleased to join my fellow Texan, Mr. McCall, as a co-sponsor, along with our subcommittee ranking members, Dr. Ehlers and Representative Smith of Nebraska. I also want to note my appreciation for what this bill does not do. It avoids calling for any activities that could amount to being regulatory in nature. I think this is important. The committee heard from multiple outside witnesses that heavy federal involvement in private sector cybersecurity processes would actually be counterproductive to security. I hope we can ensure this bill continues to restrain from such action as it moves through the legislative process. This is a good bill and represents a small but important step in the government's overall efforts to address cybersecurity issues. I want to thank the chairman for working closely with all of us on this legislation. I look forward to continued cooperative efforts as we move forward. I yield back my time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? Mr. Pinsky, would you like to be recognized on the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. H.R. 4061 is a product of the combined efforts of the Research and Science Education Subcommittee and those of my colleagues on the Technology and Innovation Subcommittee. I'd like to especially thank Dr. Ehlers, Mr. Wu and Mr. Smith for the contributions to the bill we are considering today. The two subcommittees have held a series of hearings on various aspects of cybersecurity, including the state of R&D, the agency's response to the 60-day review, and the specific role of NIST in cybersecurity. At these hearings, witnesses emphasized the need to better coordinate and prioritize the federal R&D portfolio, to improve partnerships between the federal government and the private sector, to coordinate U.S. representation in international standard-setting bodies, and to train an IT workforce that can meet the growing needs of both the public and private sectors. The legislation we are considering today addresses these concerns. First, it requires federal agencies to develop and implement a strategic plan for the federal cybersecurity R&D portfolio. The plan must be based on an assessment of cybersecurity risk to make sure that taxpayer dollars fund the R&D needed to meet the strategic needs of our country and to keep Internet users safe from cybercrime. The strategic plan will also contain a description of how the program will transfer technology from our national labs and universities to industry, since technology transfer is perhaps the most important component of any successful R&D program. For the same reason, the bill establishes a university industry task force to explore mechanisms and models for carrying out collaborative research in cybersecurity and make sure that federal strategic plan is informed by industry needs. In addition, the legislation addresses cybersecurity workforce needs for the federal government and for the nation as a whole by providing fellowships to students pursuing advanced degrees in cybersecurity-related fields. The bill reauthorizes and expands the NSF's Trustworthy Computing Program, placing a new emphasis on research into the social and behavioral aspects of cybersecurity, an important area identified by our witnesses. H.R. 4061 also emphasizes research into identity management at both NSF and NIST. Finally, the bill addresses public awareness by requiring NIST to develop a plan for disseminating best practices and technical standards to the general public in a user-friendly format that will improve their basic cybersecurity knowledge. In conclusion, H.R. 4061 is a good bipartisan bill that will help to ensure an overall vision for the federal cybersecurity R&D portfolio, will help train the next generation of cybersecurity professionals, improve cybersecurity technical standards, and will strengthen public-private partnerships in cybersecurity. This bill addresses a very urgent need that's becoming even greater every day in our nation, and I think we have a very good bill here to address the science and technology aspects of this issue. With that, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Dr. Lipinski. Does anyone else wish to? Mr. McCall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me thank Mr. Lipinski for this this bill. I was proud to be the lead co-sponsor on the bill, original co-sponsor. The Internet provides great opportunities and advances, but it also presents many challenges and many threats. Cybersecurity, I think, is one of the most important issues we face as a nation, and one of the key issues we face when dealing with cybersecurity is the lack of an adequately trained workforce, both in the government and in the private sector. This bill acts on the research recommendations of the CSIS Commission on Cybersecurity, which I co-chaired, and this is a report. Congressman Jim Longevin and I co-chaired this, along with CSIS. Some of the top experts in the nation developed this report. And I'm very pleased to see this bill addressing two of those recommendations. One, to develop a federal cyber workforce. This bill does that by creating a scholarship program at the NSF that can be repaid with federal service. In addition, it improves cybersecurity R&D and coordination, which was another recommendation from the Commission. And this bill does that by reauthorizing the cyber programs at NSF, as well as expanding NIST efforts and encouraging cooperation between the academic and private sectors with the University and Industry Task Force. So just let me close by again commending the gentleman, Mr. Lipinski, for introducing the bill, and I look forward to its final passage. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. McCall, for your active involvement in putting this bill together. Mr. Wu is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to recognize your leadership in bringing this bill together and Mr. Lipinski's very fine work. The NIST sections of the bill from my Technology and Innovation Subcommittee hearings result from some very valuable information that we collected and some efforts to add new approaches or strengthen new approaches. NIST is the only federal agency which is tasked with protecting the government's non-classified computer systems, and it is therefore very important that we work together to continuously adapt to the current scope of cybersecurity concerns and also prepare for some of the concerns of the future. And it is also very important that we achieve these goals by maximizing the effectiveness of our programs and resources and continuously tuning them up, and not just by spending more money. And today's legislation reflects this strategy. The legislation calls for an increased coordination among federal agencies and also calls for enhanced education programs. And I'd just like to add that the education programs, I think, have some of the best potential for enhancing cybersecurity at low cost. There are some very technically sophisticated ways of enhancing cybersecurity, but there are some simple ways also. In my home state, some folks were backing up the computer every night, their computer systems every night, and taking the disks home, and some of these disks were stolen out of the back of a car, and a lot of records were lost. You know, some aspects of computer security are rocket science, and others are fairly simple precautionary steps which most people can take. It's like the analogy to our fire bill that we'll have on the floor later today is that while you may need sophisticated fire suppression systems, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to teach folks not to play with matches. And there is an analogy here about the sophisticated things that we need to do and the more straightforward education programs that will enhance computer security at relatively low cost. Again, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership in bringing the two halves of this legislation together, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Will. I had the easy part. You all had the hard part, and again, I want to thank Mr. McCall and Mr. Smith, Dr. Ehlers, Dr. Lipinski, Mr. Will, and all the members of your committee and the staff for your work, having all the hearings. You did the groundwork, and just that's why things turn out well. So thank you. So now I ask unanimous consent that the bill. Yes. No, that's not. He doesn't want. I ask unanimous consent that the bill is considered as read and open to amendment at any point, and that the members proceed with the amendments in the order of the roster without objection. So ordered. The first amendment on the roster is an amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by the gentleman from Illinois, Dr. Lipinski. Are you ready to proceed with your amendment?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 046, amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 4061 offered by Mr. Lipinski of Illinois.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. I recognize the gentleman for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment makes some technical corrections in addition to reinstating two sections that were part of the bill passed out of the Research and Science Education Subcommittee. The sections specifically address cybersecurity workforce concerns. First, the amendment requires the President to assess the cybersecurity skills needed by the federal government, to compare them to the skills sought by industry, and then to examine the capacity of our colleges and universities to produce those qualified cybersecurity professionals. It also requires an assessment of the effectiveness of federal programs such as the National Centers of Academic Excellence in Information Assurance Education that are aimed at promoting cybersecurity research and education at our colleges and universities. Additionally, the amendment attempts to address the estimated shortfall in cybersecurity professionals by authorizing the Federal Cyber Scholarship for Service program at the NSF. This program would provide scholarships to undergraduate and graduate students pursuing degrees in cybersecurity. It requires them, in return, to serve an equal number of years in the federal IT workforce. The amendment clarifies that 3-year scholarships are for students pursuing doctoral degrees, and it specifies that students who are unable to meet their service obligation at a federal agency or federally funded R&D center can meet their obligation by serving as a cybersecurity professional in a state, local, or tribal government agency. And finally, the amendment ensures that cybersecurity researchers have access to data relevant to the development, testing, and evaluation of security technologies. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment.
Is there further discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Hall is recognized.
the subcommittee chairman's amendment in the nature of a substitute simply makes some good technical changes and incorporates some valuable feedback we received from several folk familiar with NSF's cybersecurity programs. I support the amendment, urge its adoption. I yield back.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? If not, the second amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Lujan. Are you ready to proceed?
Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 032, amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 4061, offered by Mr. Lujan of New Mexico.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. Recognize the gentleman for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment today amends two sections of the Cybersecurity Enhancement Act of 2009, Sections 106 and Section 203. Section 106 of the bill establishes the Federal Cyber Scholarship for Service Program, which will help recruit and train the next generation of cybersecurity professionals. This will be done through grant awards that support the development of cybersecurity-related curricula, faculty, professional development, and institutional partnerships within institutions of higher education. My amendment today specifies that this program increases the capacity of institutions of higher education throughout all regions of the United States to train cybersecurity professionals. The goal of this amendment is to address any potential regional disparities in this program by ensuring that the program increases the ability of colleges and universities from all parts of the country to train highly qualified cybersecurity professionals. New Mexico is home to excellent research universities like the University of New Mexico, New Mexico State University, New Mexico Technical College. It is important that our universities in the Southwest, as well as other regions of the United States, are training cybersecurity professionals to become part of a geographically diverse talent pool. This will also promote local economic growth as companies, organizations, and government agencies like our national laboratories will have better opportunities to hire locally trained talent. Section 203 of the bill establishes a program to promote cybersecurity awareness and education in order to increase public awareness of cybersecurity risks. The program seeks to make cybersecurity standards and practices usable by individuals, businesses, and state and local governments. My amendment today adds tribal governments to the list of entities cybersecurity standards and best practices are designed to assist. My district in New Mexico is home to 18 different tribes, and many of these tribes are currently in the early stages of information technology development. As our tribes increase their level of connectivity and dependence on IT, it is critically important that we educate tribal communities about the risks of cyber attacks and how to take necessary precautions to protect sensitive information from cyber criminals. Establishing cybersecurity standards and practices that our tribal communities will benefit from will greatly achieve the objective of this section to promote cybersecurity awareness and education. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of the Cybersecurity Enhancement Act of 2009, and I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Gordon, Chairman Wu, Chairman Lipinski, Ranking Members McCall, and Ranking Member Smith for their hard work on this important bill, and I urge my colleagues to support this amendment today. Yield back my time.
Is there further discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hall is recognized.
this amendment's another good Lujan amendment, and it simply adds language ensuring that the scholarship program authorized in this bill is geographically diverse. I support the amendment and urge its adoption. I say another good amendment because he's of a given family from a great state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Is there further discussion on the amendment? If no, the vote occurs on the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The third amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. McCall. Are you ready to proceed with your amendment?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 027, amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 4061, offered by Mr. McCall of Texas.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. I recognize the gentleman for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment has to do with the NIST checklist provision in this bill. Basically, the amendment would clarify that NIST inform agencies of the availability of cybersecurity products under the National Checklist Program, and two, that NIST checklists are not required to be used by agencies. This bill expands NIST's responsibility for updating and disseminating guidance to federal agencies on cybersecurity. There was some concern that the language in the bill would prevent NIST from including software developed outside of NIST on the checklist distributed to the federal agencies. This amendment clarifies that NIST can include software developed by an outside source or by the private sector. There's no reason that federal agencies should not be allowed to software developed by the private sector if that software is superior and can do the job. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McCall. I think that's the theme of the bill, is to a coordination between public and private sector. Is there further discussion on the amendment?
Chairman,
Mr. Hall is recognized.
I'm pleased to support my colleague from Texas and the lead Republican co-sponsor of the underlying bill with his amendment. I think it's good, sound policy, and so does the Business Software Alliance. I ask unanimous consent that their letter of support be submitted for the record. Bob Holloman, the President and CEO.
Without objection, so ordered.
I support the amendment and urge its adoption and yield back my time.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? If no, all in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The fourth amendment on the roster is offered by the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Wu. Are you ready to proceed with your amendment?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 027, amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 4061 offered by Mr. Wu of Oregon.
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading.
Granted, and I recognize the gentleman for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My amendment adds one task to NIST's work on identity management research and development. Today's bill directs NIST to improve the interoperability, the authentication methods, and privacy protection of identity management systems. This amendment would add usability to this list. The aim is to simplify how these systems are installed, set up, and used, and simply to make these methodologies more user-friendly. Improving usability is a key element in growing the widespread adoption of these important security systems, and I yield back the balance of my time, Mr. Chair.
Is there further discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hall is recognized.
I'm agreeable to not having to listen to his reading, but this amendment clarifies that NIST activities in the realm of identity management include research to improve the usability of identity management systems. And we all know that information systems are only useful if people know how to use them effectively. This amendment ensures that as we research ways to improve the security of our cyber networks, that we're mindful of the human element involved in that success. I support the amendment, urge its passage.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Is there further discussion on the amendment? If no, the vote in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. Are there other amendments? If not, then the vote occurs on the amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by the gentleman from Illinois as amended. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The vote is now on the bill, H.R. 4061 as amended. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. I now recognize Mr. Wu for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee favorably report H.R. 4061 as amended to the House with the recommendation that the bill do pass. Furthermore, I move that staff be instructed to prepare the legislative report and make necessary technical and conforming changes, and that the chairman take all necessary steps to bring the bill before the House for consideration.
The questions on the motion to report the bill favorably. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Members will have 2 subsequent calendar days in which to submit supplemental minority or additional views on the measure. And let me, again, I want to thank everyone for coming today. I know that you have other things to do, but we can't proceed if you're not here. I know you get here and you say, well, that was easy. It wasn't so easy. These subcommittees have put a lot of work on this, and it's a good bill. Cybersecurity is important, and this committee will play a major role now in our nation's cybersecurity. So I thank you, and this meeting is concluded.
Thank you. I've got 7 with me today. I'm going to call them.
Hey,
Hey, how you doing?